Rick, I love that for the last episode, we've saved the topic of deeper joy, because when leaders like me think about leadership, you think about development and growth and the burden of leadership, of care, responsibility is a word I think about. But one of the lessons you've learned over the years is there's actually a way to have deeper joy in the leadership moments.
Yes, I'm learning, Brad.
That's a good way to put it.
I'm learning. That's been a hard one for me. It's been really a hard thing. My wife says by nature I'm an Eeyore. And so I don't think that's a compliment. I've been trying to understand. I don't think that's a good thing. But I think one of the things the Lord would say to me is like, man, you have the knack for turning a blessing into a burden. It's the very things you just described. There is a weight to this thing. There are consequences. These are people's lives. This is trying to break out the kingdom of God in a harsh way. We have opposition. Jesus said you're going to have trials and like suffering. And you spend time around people suffering. Like, a lot of what you do is sometimes it's self-inflicted, which is even worse, but sometimes it's just awful things people walk through. And so I don't want to suggest that that's not all real, but everything we know about humanity would tell you that we need to cultivate joy in the middle of these things. Even in the Psalms, which start out often like, but I rejoice in you. Rejoice, or my soul, rejoice. And not circumstances haven't changed, just rejoice in who He is. If you have people who are in a survival situation, like on a life rafting in the ocean, or in a concentration camp in World War II, we know the research says that those who still celebrate a birthday, who still find life, and actually wind up living longer. You've got a better shot at living through disease. It's a really powerful thing. And I early on just did not make room for. I would take all the things we've talked about, anxious attachment, a sense of like struggling to move towards the hard things, wanting to protect myself, wanting to control outcomes. You put all that together, there's just not a lot of room for joy. But I have found it to be so important. And Brendan Manning says that the path in his book Ruthless Trust, the path to trust is gratitude. Fascinating thought. And so I've really learned more and more. I practice more and more gratitude. I practice more and more, oh, that's wonderful. I create more space to drink deeply of what God has done. So again, I mentioned Deuteronomy 8 earlier. I've been camping in that, so it's really on my mind. But He says, I'm going to lead you into this land, and it's going to be amazing. And I'm going to, basically, I'm going to lead you there, and you're going to know that I have provided for you. And the only caveat He says is, continue to seek me, and don't forget and think that this came from the power of your hand. And so the danger is not that we have fun and enjoy and the things that are good in the midst of the hard. The danger would be as we start to think that we're the ones who create that. But I did not regard joy as a significant part of my leadership for a very long time, until I started experiencing more of it and realizing I'm a much better leader when I take the time to cultivate joy.
That's good. So, deeper joy, lesson number 17 that you would say to emerging leaders is celebrate more.
Absolutely. I am okay, we got that done, what's next? I'm someone, and I don't know if this is a true story or not, but the story of Nick Saban winning the national championship, getting on the plane and starting to work on the next season. I don't know if that's apocryphal or whatever, but I get it, I understand it. Casting vision for this new season. We have this new opportunity in front of us. I did it twice, like major new initiative that would transform the church. And the joy of casting that vision and immediately is killed by, but we got to get this thing done, and where we're going to get the money, and how's this going to. The first time I did it, 2009, 2010, a lot of pressure. The last time I did it, 2018, 2019, a lot less. I didn't put that. I was able to just like, well, people say, how are we going to do this? I'm like, well, if we've chosen this, God's going to provide or He's not. And if He provides, we'll know we chose the right thing. If He doesn't, we didn't choose the right thing. Like, it's just more like, let's see what He does and celebrate. But I tried in that time to. Now, unfortunately, one part of the project, our building part, finished in the middle of the pandemic, and so I felt like there was some loss there for that joy to celebrate. Celebrating birthdays in my family.
Yeah.
Like not rushing in at the last minute because I just finished an appointment with somebody's marriage who's falling apart. I love those people. I care about their marriage falling apart. I probably wouldn't do that right before I go to my kid's birthday.
Yeah.
I'd tell them another day. I'd put that off for another day. Anniversaries with my wife, they could get swallowed up by all the demands of the church, and just finding ways to look. Life is just going to be hard.
Yeah.
Ministry is going to be hard. People are going to be hard. Cultivate and celebrate what is good in the midst of that, and you can breathe deeper, and it doesn't all feel so hard and so weighty. And I read the scriptures. When God provides good things, He's given you permission and blessing to enjoy those things.
Yeah, there's a theology of party in the scriptures that I think in kind of our modern expression of faith we miss, or actually maybe God knew we would be prone to the next thing, and so that when He organizes the calendar of His people, He institutes feasts and celebrations periodically.
Yes.
Like one of His commands was not just, hey, live holy, live righteous. Yes and amen to all of those things. But it was also like feast, celebrate, create these milestones of remembrance, constantly celebrate my goodness. There's not enough of that in our theology.
Well, and the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. I've come that you might have life and might have it to the full. And then also tell you, you're going to have trouble in this world.
Yeah.
Or count it all joy when you have trials. Not be glad you have trials, but find the joy in the midst of that. It's there. I think you're right. I think and I actually think this would be a longer conversation. I'll just say it relates to a lot of things we've talked about before. We're trying to build something. We're anxious. We don't give ourselves room to celebrate because we've got to get this other thing done.
Yeah.
And we're being like drug along by the anxiety of like, are we going to be okay as a leader?
It's good. In line with that, you would tell younger leaders, not only would I celebrate more, but lesson number 18, I would just play more.
Yes. Play more, play harder. Work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
Doesn't take a ton of money. We live in East Tennessee. You can go play can be go have a picnic by the lake with your family, or take your kids. If you got friends got a boat, or take your kids on a hike.
Smokies.
Go to Smokies. Go to Imes Nature Center. My son-in-law, Stephen, has 3 boys. They go to your church, and he's the best at just creative play. Yeah, you'll take them for a hike in the rain. And
like instead of a rainy day being a bad thing, it's get your raincoats on, get your boots on. Let's go play in the mud.
That's right. Oh yeah,
it's brilliant.
Yeah. And mud is the currency of joy for my grandsons.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be an expensive kind of thing, but there are also those things of go to a ball game if you can afford to go to a ball game. Go to a theater. Have a recreational something that you enjoy, if it's pickleball, or if it's tennis, or if it's playing cards, if it's just really like I tell people, I just didn't understand this, Brad. I just didn't understand how important play was, and because of my builder gifts, like I started out coaching basketball, and my first little team I had, we were 0-8. We were terrible, and 10 years later, I'm playing in front of college coaches to get guys recruited, and somewhere in there was the middle that it got such a big deal in the travel, and it wasn't playing anymore.
Yeah.
And so my wife asked me, "You ever going to coach again?" I said, "Yeah, but I'm not going to coach at that level because now that's fine. I loved it. I'm glad I did it, but we had an AAU organization. It got bigger.
Yeah.
And the thing that I'd gone to have my play in became another thing for me to build and work and worry about.
Yeah.
Now, why is that true, Brad? Because I feel more comfortable by nature in the thing I have to build and think about and worry about and fix than I do just play.
Yeah.
So I would have leaned much harder and I do that now. I mean, I'm moving much more towards play, and I try to take leaders and help them learn how to play and do things that affirm
Yeah.
the goodness of a creative God who wants us to live in a creative way.
So I had this moment where I realized that I had drifted too much away from play. My daughter hit a home run the other night, and somebody texted me and said, well, what are you getting her for the home run? And Rick, my honest first thought was, why should she get prizes for home runs? You know, you're a good player, right? Like, and all of a sudden the game became like some sort of business discipline thing. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, no, let's go back to Little League where ice cream, like joy. There's a scarcity mindset in our theology that sometimes I think keeps us from feeling that celebration and play is okay, that we so don't lean into who God says that we are, that we can't even envision a God who delights in us. But if we could really envision a God who delights in us, we would see that God feels about us in our joy the way we feel about our kids in their joy.
Yes.
Like when you see your kid thrilled with a new gift or an experience, you get more joy from your child's joy than from your own joy, right?
Yes.
We understand that. Like, what if our Heavenly Father feels the same way about us, enjoying His goodness in our life?
Absolutely. And that is something, Brad, if you're a leader, you're going to have to cultivate that. That is not going to come naturally. You are going to work, and you're going to, because you're measuring yourself off of how much is happening. You've got an external source for your identity. We all do that by nature until we come back and have our identity fully formed, being more fully formed. Then we're released to be able, like, hey, I really want to do this. I really want to steward this. But it's okay for me to enjoy it. So in this season of life, as Teresa and I transition to my new role and my work, we're asking the questions of now, how can we do more of this together? And what are some fun things we can do as we go through this?
One last note on that. You know, we live in a productivity addicted world.
Yes.
My leadership really changed a couple of years ago. You know, we're just coming off the Easter season, which for church leaders is like this big deal, new guests. And so follow up, you know, growth and all of that. Well, the last 2 years instead of having staff meeting, we went and played at Topgolf. Yeah. And just ate pizza. And most of my staff are terrible at golf. And it's just laughing and enjoying the moment.
It's just enjoying the moment.
That's the most important thing I've done this week as a leader.
Yeah.
It's just go play with my team.
Love it. Great example. Perfect.
Lesson number 19. And I find this interesting in the category of joy and would love to hear you explain it more. You would have trusted more, but with more discernment.
Yes. Being in a team is a joyful thing. I mean, it's one of the reasons we love sports. One of the reasons we miss playing them. It's being in a team. It's one of the reasons why you coach. I coach. Like, I showed you, we're here in my office, we're in my home, and we went downstairs and I showed, here's my new office. And I said, the weirdness about it is, like, this is my whole organization. You know, this is my team right here. I got a couple people who are part-time and it'll grow. But right now it's just such a weird thing to be like, well, this is what I do by myself mostly, right? So I put a board together, I'm putting an advisory team. I just want to be in teams with people. And your joy is multiplied when you high five each other. Your joy is multiplied when it doesn't work and you're able to be in the room together and comfort one another. There's a joy in the journey that comes from that. There's a place to go when our joy is being robbed. When we have trusted people we can talk to. Like I just feel like I'm losing. You can't go to your people and say, hey, just by the way, like I'm not enjoying this at all. You don't go tell your people that. But you'd have a trusted person, I just don't enjoy this at all right now. And I know that's about me, and you know, so. But what I did not understand is you're always going to have conflict. Things are going to not end right. I mean, that's just life. But sometimes I have trusted people with parts of myself I should not have trusted them with. They didn't, and I want to say this in the right way. If you say, well, people got to earn your trust, that sounds like you're suspicious. But if you think of like, here's this mug, and let's say that like here's your soul and here's your performance, right? Obviously, the person who's the deepest in here should be your wife, like or husband, right? It should be your person, and then you have your close family and friends, and it kind of works its way up. I don't want the people I'm working with in my most trusted relationships up here. I want them moving down here, but I have sometimes moved people too quickly.
Yeah.
It's a deep desire. I wanted that. I loved working with them, but I put them too deep. And down the road, when things got really tough and hard, and they pull out, that hurts.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be hurt and sad and all those kinds of things, but it's a hurt that was unnecessary. And so I would have just had a fewer people.
Yeah.
And I would have really built more trust with them, and I'd have gone deeper with them more, and I would not have invited people into that circle who had not demonstrated over a period of time that that's a circle that my wife always says you have, she's a therapist, but she says you have paper plates, you have the nicer Chinette paper plates, you have your everyday, and then you have your china. She said, think about how rare it is for you to bring her china is from a family member. It's probably 75 years old.
Wow.
Think of how rarely she would bring that china out. She said, that's what you got to think about with your inner world. There's not very many people that you feed off of your fine china.
Super wise.
Yes. I would have exercised more wisdom in that. Having said that, I will tell you this, two things. I would rather err on the side of risking too much as being too protective. If I was going to err one way or the other, I'd err on it. I probably shouldn't have shared that with that person versus I'm not sharing anything with people.
Yeah.
If that guarded, it is not good when we wall ourselves off. We keep things hidden. Hidden things never do well. The other thing I want to say is about church hurt. It's not in this thing, but I want to talk about it. It's a big topic now. And it should be, because there's been so much abuse and narcissism and sexism and racism and, I mean, going on, powering and manipulation. And so I want to say that is a real thing, and that would cause you to feel unsafe in church. I get that.
Yeah.
I want to say there's another kind of church hurt, and to separate the categories. That's the kind of church hurt with, I had a conflict with my pastor with the way things happened, and we just disagreed and I left. Someone in my life group, my small group, I shared something confidential and they betrayed that. My church disagrees with how I agree with this particular issue.
Yeah.
And when they challenged me on it, I felt rejected. That's not the same as abuse.
Yeah.
It's real. It's
good.
true. It's not abuse. And so don't let this church hurt rob you of joy. I got a little bit of church hurt. I got a shipload of marriage hurt.
Yeah.
That I have inflicted on my wife and she's inflicted on me. And we haven't given up on marriage.
Yeah.
So I think we have to be really wise about, if we have these kinds of hurt, don't let that take away the joy of being a part of the body, of being in trusted relationships. Same for a pastor or a leader. I trusted these people. Yeah. They betrayed me. I'm never trusting anybody again. Well, you're killing your heart. You can't do this.
Conflict can't be seen as the enemy of joy. Matter of fact, it might be the thing that's, if you work through it, you'll actually experience joy.
That's really well said. And I'll add to that, because that's beautifully said. When you go to hard places with people and they distrust you, you didn't create that, unless you did something untrustworthy. You just exposed the fact that the relationship was actually up here and you were operating down here.
Yeah.
You're just exposing the distrust. And people, relationships storm, form, and norm. And when they storm, sometimes they don't make it. But they have to storm if they're going to go deeper. And that's just the way of life. And finding trusted people, but discerning who those people should be.
Well, that leads us to lesson number 20. One of the thieves of joy is when we become too preoccupied with the external opinions about us. And so you say, I would have listened to fewer external voices, weighting different influence.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So I talked earlier in one of the episodes about I'd listen to my voice, listen to my wife's voice. I'd listen to the Holy Spirit, and I listen to people close in I trust. But man, everybody's got an opinion about you as a leader. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do. I was someone who's a very prominent figure in the world of professional sports at an owner's kind of level. And a friend of a friend we were having this conversation, and he was just talking about he'd done something for the franchise that has turned out to be, people have said, this is so significant. He said, yeah, but when I first did it, I guess everybody complained, and there's so much complaining, and there's so many. I've heard this said, I don't know where this came from, the average pastor, when he leaves a church, and this was a he, and it could be he or she, but the average lead pastor leaves a church because 7 people don't like them. And it's that anxiety, it's that not insecure attachment, it's all those things working its way out, performance, not dealing with conflict. But you get the email that's accusing you of all these things, and you're like, I just gave my heart to these people, and now I'm getting this, or I gave my heart in this teaching, or you and I both had this situation. I invested a decade in these people. Yeah. And then they're like, all they can say is like how I failed them and how I haven't been there for, all this stuff. And that has a weight to it. Mm-hmm. But we've got to really be careful that it doesn't take on weight that it doesn't belong.
That's good.
I want to weight voices based on how much they know me, how bought in they are to what we're trying to accomplish, how much maturity and willingness they have to work through conflict, and not when the person sends the 3-page email, 3-page handwritten letter to me and then sends a copy to my wife at her work about how awful I am. I just don't think I'm going to give that weight, Brad.
Yeah.
And the person who's in my church for a dozen years doesn't like something I say one Sunday morning and disappears and never comes back. I'm just not going to weight that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Mm-hmm. So there is this piece where sometimes, those are really extreme examples, where we do get a critique and it exposes a weakness, a failure, we drop the ball.
Yeah.
But you say one of the real keys to deeper joy, lesson number 21, you would have made greater peace with your humanity.
Yes. I have, much of my leadership life, I had a contempt for my humanity. I saw that's the problem. If I can eliminate this, fix this, my inner critic is scans to point out the flaw in me, to try to fix it, to protect myself from losing people. That's how my mind works. That's my relational DNA. If I do enough, be enough, carry enough for people, they won't go away. And when I fail to do that, they go away. Well, sometimes I fail to do it the way they want or the way I should, and they go away. So they've got a lot of reinforcement of that, right? But Scripture talks about we carry these. We're jars of clay.
Yeah.
So I said this way: I've gone from my humanity being the problem to my humanity being the greatest opportunity and source for the Spirit of God to break out into my life.
Yeah. That
the grace I experience in that humanity actually becomes the most powerful source for strength and courage. And, it means that my concept of God with me has to include my concept of me choosing to be with God in my humanity. And I want to be with God in my overcoming of my humanity, not in my humanity, but He incarnated and put the Spirit within me to be a part of my humanity. And one of the things I've been thinking about, the greatest commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. And I turn that into, let's go. We're going to love God. And I look at Scripture, it says we love because He first loved us. I think the key to loving God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength is to experience Him loving us in our heart, soul, mind, and strength in the places that need the grace, where the weakness are. And far from, I was telling somebody the other day, I think the places in my life that I most despise, and there are some, are the things he most desires, because that's where we're going to build the intimacy. So, yes, I would have been so much more, I'm much more gracious with other people than I am myself, which is that's a pride issue. At the end of the day, that's actually idolatry.
Be curious how you feel about this, but when I talk about this concept with other leaders, there's a word I've tried to kind of exercise out of the vocabulary. We tend to talk about strengths and weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
And the underlying assumption there is the strength's good, weakness is bad. And then how do you either eliminate this weakness or turn it into a strength? And I actually think that ignores the reality of our humanity.
I think that's brilliant. I
That
agree with
what
that.
we really have are our strengths and our limitations.
Mm-hmm.
And our limitations are noble. They're given to us by God. Your limitations are what invites me into your life.
Yeah.
If you have no limitations, you have no need for me.
Yeah. Well, I think you've probably heard me say this quote that someone turned into a piece of art, but about it's our lack that's the gospel. It's who we are, not what we don't have and possess, what we cannot do, what we cannot become. That is the most valuable part of who we are for the sake of the gospel. Yeah. And I think your wording of strengths, limitations is a great way to think about that. I would be dishonest if I said, I've got this, I'm good, I'm good. My anxiety about my failures and potential failures continue to be one of the places where I have to meet Christ the most, where I need the most listening to his voice, need to pay attention. And I'm finding a lot of freedom in that, but it's a deep root in me, Brad. It's a deep, I keep pulling that thing and pulling that thing. But as the Spirit of God does that, I feel more loved, I feel more secure, and I feel less contempt for those things in me, and more joy in the fact that I don't have to be anything else.
Yeah. I
don't have to do anything else. I don't have to prove. I don't have to protect that humility and vulnerability. It's my last time I'm speaking at the church this Sunday as lead pastor, and I want it to go well. And the more time I spend about trying to make it go well, the worse it gets. It feels like a burden.
Yeah.
It feels like well, what if I don't say that? Do I really have time? And the more I'm like, how in that 20 to 25 minutes would I offer myself to the people in the most authentic way of what my journey is actually like? And then I find all the freedom. And you know what's interesting? In the first scenario, Brad, there's no joy. It's like, I got to get this right. I want to do this well. I don't want to be remembered I want to be, and I'm sure people are watching this like, you're 63 years old. You still deal with ass every dang day, right? And I get, it's like a batter at the plate where you're tense, like you can't. Yeah. But when I start thinking about how would I offer this, it actually becomes about the Father. And then I'm like, my heart's free, and I'm like, I need to tell you about my dad here. I need to tell you about my dad. And that's joyous, because he loves me. Like, he actually loves me, and he celebrates the humanity, not runs away from it.
That's good. Lesson 22.
Yeah.
Final leadership legacy. I find this a bit ironic. So, years of seminary training, youth pastor, assistant pastor, seminary professor.
Yeah.
Now, nearly a quarter century at Fellowship Church, 22 years as the lead pastor. And your last lesson is
wait a second. I don't know what it is. I don't remember it. So the buildup is really good because I don't even remember what it is.
You said you would have been less religious.
Yes. Yeah, that's my favorite one. I remember that now. I mean a lot of things.
Would be less religious. Talk about that.
It goes back to when I said, the Spirit of God was like, did I ask you to do that? Did I ask you to be like that? We have so many things that we have locked and loaded on, it's easy to see my generation, 50 years ago, evangelical churches where you couldn't drink, you couldn't smoke, you can't dance, you can't play cards, you can't go to movies. I had a professor in college who that was his world.
Yeah. It's the world I grew up in.
Okay. And it's easy to just like poke at that, right?
Sure.
Like, come on. What is harder is to ask yourself the question, what is about how we're doing this, how I'm living, how I'm thinking, how I'm acting, what I am assigning to the measurement of me being a good person, a follower of Jesus, what's actually religion, religion is a man-made approach to relating to God. It's the thing we make up to make ourselves feel secure and significant to ourselves and to God and to other people. And so I just would have worried less about what people thought about all that stuff. I would have worried less about some of my political thoughts, that if you want to be offended by that, knowing that I'm not telling you it's biblical, I'm just telling you this is how I think about it. And you want to make it into, well, if you're a really mature follower of Jesus, you have to think like this politically. I would have just worried less about that. I haven't, I have, things about my personality that are a little irreverent. And I don't want to be blasphemous, and I don't want to be dishonoring to God. But I would have been a little more honest about the edginess I have about, like, does that really matter? Like, I know you think that matters. Does that really matter? We saw it in the, how I'm going to talk about this. Every good thing turns into religion, right? So the sexual purity in my younger generation, what a great biblical concept, sexual purity. Understanding yourself as a whole person sexually, understanding grace when you struggle, because no one's sexually whole because our identities aren't whole. This is who we are. And then it turned into a rigid category of, like, and
the ultimate measure of some sort of teenage success or achievement.
Yeah, if we
and also failure if you didn't meet somebody else's prescribed standard.
I mean, it's just one example. I could take it the way, I think it'd be really a bad idea to swear like a sailor. But sometimes, Brad, I can't find another word that describes that.
Yeah.
Sure, make people uncomfortable with this.
What I hear you saying is more comfortable with your authentic self.
Yes, and my authentic self is a little messy, and it's a little raw, and it has moments when it's like, I wish I hadn't said that way. Here's what, I would rather, not off the chain, but I'd rather say something later, come back and say, I probably didn't say that the right way, or I apologize, I shouldn't have used that word, than always guarding myself to show how religious and strong I am because I never say things I shouldn't say. I would rather get in a conversation with someone, a real conversation about, well, why do you think that way politically? Well, I don't. And say, well, Jesus obviously didn't say anything that would tell us exactly how to think about that politically. So why don't we talk about, like, my family's very diverse. We have lots of different opinions and ideas about things. And I have a rule with all my adult children, including the ones who marry into my family. You have to be yourself. Do not come in here and pretend to be something don't say the thing you think that your pastor, dad, or father-in-law wants you to say. Yeah. Say what you actually think and feel. So sometimes those conversations are, like, we've actually had conversations where we really disagree on some things. But I'll always walk away saying, thank you for telling me the truth about what you thought, because it helped me think about something differently. And that's what I mean by being less rigid. But just this, I'm not saying throw all politics, anything goes, and swear and get and drink too much. And obviously, I mean, Scripture's called us some things about that, right? But the level of, like,
so there's a way in which we can be so careless that that's unhelpful.
Yes.
But also so careful that we're not actually bringing who we are into the room.
Yes, that's religion. Doesn't work. This doesn't work. I mean, licentiousness and antinomianism, whatever you want to call it, you want to put the big words on it, or just carelessness. That never works. You can't do that. Mm-hmm. But my wife's a sex therapist, among other things, right? So this can happen in our conversations. But I would say to my wife, hey, I just want you to know, like I've struggled more with lust lately than I have usually. I'm just noticing I'll watch something or look something long, and I'm just telling you that, Well, it works fine for her because she's a sex therapist. She's like, well, that's about you, it's not about me, Like she's not sitting there thinking, oh, he prefers other people over me. She's like, that's on you, buddy, But that makes it safe for me, and it's actually a safe place to be. I'm like, I can see, Teresa, in this situation, how I need to be more careful, like when I watch or see something. But I actually need to find out why I'm more susceptible to lust now. That I've told my elders before, hey, I've had a harder time with lust lately, which tells me I'm insecure. Mm. You see the difference in those kinds of things? I mean, I don't deal with lust, or you just say it generically from the pulpit. Oh, well, I deal with lust like everybody. But to say to your wife or your elders, actually, I'm struggling right now, because you actually want to get to what's underneath that, is not religious.
Yeah.
I could go on, but you got the point.
Yeah.
And
don't put a system in front of grace.
No. And you got a whole thank you, not put a system in front of grace. I don't want to move past that too quickly. You got a whole generation, Brad, that's coming up. If you lead with the system, they're gone. And I think that we are unnecessarily putting up barriers for the next generation to come in and struggle with politics and hard conversations and
theology,
and we put up barrier after barrier after barrier, and that's religion. Now, I've had people say, well, let's just build a church where we don't have doctrine, that's not a church. That's not actually what Jesus said.
Not the point.
So your words are great when system gets in front of grace, and I'm so animated about it, and I care so deeply about it, because I'm watching us lose a generation over religious things, that if we were just more honest, if we were just more raw, if we just didn't feel so much pressure to be some religiously constructed version of a Christian, and instead were people who just desperately need Jesus, and most of the time have no idea what we're actually doing, or even what's going on. But we have a God who's intimately attentive and involved and pursuing us and calling us to be his own, and let's just go do that together. That's what I am doing differently in my life, but I would have loved to have known that 22 years ago.
I can't think of a better way to end our 22 leadership lessons than let's just go after Jesus and give people Jesus.
Yes. Here's the deal. If that's not enough, what are we doing? If that's not enough,
we've got nothing else.
We got nothing else. That's it. That's all we got. Thanks for asking all your great questions and giving your insight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick.